Yes. It's all about you. Don't be too quiet. So we're on live now, and then it takes a few minutes for people to show up, type of thing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Hi, people.
All right, so why don't we start by just... Hi, Mika.
Hi, Carissa. How are you?
Good. Having fun on your road trip so far?
It's been eventful. Had a great time. It's been a long trip. I went to from New York to Philippines to China to London to Portland and now California. So been definitely a road trip and a half.
Yeah.
But good experiences. Not any wins on this trip, except like a few individual matches that I'm happy about. But met some wonderful people and had some really good times.
I know we were excited to have you in Portland. Did you have any particular highlights about being in Portland or the road trip down to California?
Yeah, I mean, my trip in Portland started out great. I had an exhibition match with Shane Van Boning, and I managed to beat him this time. And then I had a few good matches in the event itself. It's called
pac-west.
pac-west
Yes.
Open, and just fell a little short that time. But overall, I loved Sam's Billiards and the people. I met some good friends like you guys and Cole and everybody. Just being very hospitable, and then after that we decided to make the road trip, and then that was fun too, to go through the redwoods and get lucky with a hotel, stay on a cliff with a ocean view, cliff house.
Yeah, that was incredible.
So that was definitely epic.
Yeah. Does any of it compare to where you're from, Finland?
Well, we have hardly any like mountains or anything in Finland. It's pretty flat. Our nature consists of mostly like either pine trees or lakes. It's just like thousands of lakes and a lot of forests.
Can you describe the culture and how life is different for Finland people and American people?
I think Finnish people are they're outgoing and friendly, and maybe some of them a little bit more reserved than the average American, but all in all, like, I think Finns are curious people. They want to travel, they want to learn different cultures and people and make friends and network, and that's why it's also a very welcoming country. As a tourist to go to Finland, you will have a good experience. So, and the average person speaks like very understandable English.
Yeah. So what was it like to grow up in Finland? Obviously, how did you get started playing pool? What was childhood like for Mika?
Well, I have a twin brother, Kari, and we were always very competitive and very into different sports, very athletic and energetic. So it was a good push for me to have a competitive brother like that, and we played soccer and basketball and ice hockey. Ice hockey is a big game in Finland.
Is it?
Obviously, yeah, it's probably the biggest. But then one, fortunate winter, there was this guy Jesse put up a new pool room near the neighborhood where we lived. Uh-huh. So it was like fascinating to see this like whole different atmosphere, different instead of like going to the hockey court. Now we just got right into the pool room, and it was warm and cozy, and the lights over the table, and all these other like hotshot, like more experienced players were like maybe gambling or playing, but still like the atmosphere was kind of captivating, and I was like into it immediately.
Yeah.
Before I even hit a ball, I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting. What's going on here?
So was pool already kind of a thing in Finland, and then you know, ultimately just by virtue of the fact that it opened up close to you, it opened the doors for you, or?
I think more so this room was kind of a pioneering thing in Finland. It was like the first like really big on that scale.
Mm-hmm.
They had like different disciplines. They had snooker, they had pool, and then they had kind of this Finnish game which is related to Russian billiards, but it's called Carissa, or like international name is Carolina. So I dabbled with all the games, and I played. I started with guys actually, like it's really hard. 10-foot tables usually, and the ball is big, and the pocket is just nearly like the same size as maybe an eighth of an inch difference or less between the ball and the pocket. So you really had to be on point. And I guess, you know, coming from that table to go into the pool table or snooker table felt like, oh, this is easy. So it was a good game to learn about, you know, cue ball control and pocketing. And so I gained so many good experiences coming from Finland, even though I was like the first generation of pool players, and I didn't have like a pool mentor. But you know, I just picked up from everybody on the way.
How old were you when you started, and how long did it take to you to, you know, ramp up and get your legs under you?
I was 15 when I started, and then maybe a couple of years or so before I was reaching like national level competition, and I won the Finnish junior snooker championships when I was 17 or maybe just 18, and then when I was 19 I already won the men's like 8-ball championship or 9-ball. You know, I started winning championships left and right, and then Finland wasn't like enough. I wanted to go forward, so I'd start traveling in Scandinavia, like Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and then from there advanced to like rest of Europe.
Did your horizons kind of, it sounds like they broadened as you know, got more into it? When you were a young player, you know, kind of coming up the ranks, did you have certain goals that you wanted to achieve and then just cross them off the list, or how did that all kind of open up to you?
Yeah, it kind of just, things started materializing. I realized that I had talent, like, you know, to perform under pressure. So I knew that my not necessarily skills were like, you know, up to par with the rest of professionals, but I knew that I could like hold my own under pressure, and then that gave me faith to like go forward with the game and try to learn and absorb. Because already like when I was 19, I won the first European tour that was ever held. So I did very consistent that year, and I realized, okay, so I can do well in Europe. And then there was some really high caliber players at the time, you know, Tom Storm, Ralph Souquet, Thomas Enghert, Oliver Ordman, and some other Swedish players that were really like strong caliber, even globally, and I did well against them. So I was like, I want to expand my horizons, and next thing you know, already like 1992, I think I did my first trip to Asia. I went to Taipei, like by myself. That was really kind of a culture shock, really, but fascinating and exhilarating to see. Like, that was the first time I saw Bustamante and Efren and, you know, some other like really strong Taiwanese players.
Yeah, that has to be quite a shock to, you know, open up that whole
and
culture. And what did...
Yeah, I saw Johnny Archer there also, like, and then the Earl Strickland. So it's like I was able to compare my level against them, and I knew that I wasn't quite there, but like I made it to the quarterfinals out of like I don't know, 100-some players, and I ended up losing to Johnny Archer. I was like neck to neck with him, but I think I was 6'5", that was the best at that match, and then he beat me like, I think it was 9-5, but I figured that my my strategy wasn't like quite there yet. And safety game, this and that. I was more of very like aggressive player.
Was that 8-ball or 9-ball in Taipei?
That was 9-ball.
9-ball.
Yeah.
And so you hadn't been over to the States then yet?
I had not been to America yet. The first trip to the States was 1996, and that was in Santa Rosa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, California.
Nice.
Nonetheless, so we had a little tournament there at the ESPN Zone, so I was part of this PCA tour that was organized by like CJ Wiley and the crew. And, one of the main names at the time was still obviously Earl Strickland, so it was interesting to see, the American level was actually very high then compared to Europe. Europe was lagging behind, and then now the tables have turned.
You think so?
Sorry to say. You think?
Oh. So, a few people on here are asking how you currently practice. That was one of the big questions. How you keep your passion for the game, and what type of practice routine?
Well, I try to be humble and think that there's never, I don't know enough, and I'm still learning every day. Even today, I learned a few things. It was a bad day in the office, but you don't really lose. You learn instead of just have to reflect. But I do very much enjoy the game, and I enjoy the whole finesse and the routine. And I might have to practice a little bit more than I've been doing lately. But also, it's just kind of tricky when you're on the road and you're traveling so much, and you go from one tournament to the other. So I think if you have a good tournament, that's your practice for the next tournament. It's been quite hectic. In pool in general, you just have to travel a lot,
right,
if you want to make money.
Do you consider yourself self-taught, since you talked about not having any mentors really, or did that change and then certain people kind of stick out for you as having impacted your game?
Well, I feel like I had to learn the game of pool really by myself. Of course, we had like some technical coaching, and I was working with some people as far as like mental stuff. Like I was like focus and some meditation, but the game itself, I've been self-taught, and I just pick information and experience everywhere I go, and I watch players and see what they do and see what I would do different and why, and I tend to listen to whoever has something to say, because you never know when it's on point or not.
Right.
So I don't take any advice for granted.
I
would experiment it.
How do you weed through it?
Well, I try to understand the energy, between the communication between the cue ball and the object ball and the table and the conditions. It's just it's like a constant communication. So I'm not going to make a shot and not analyze completely what happened, whether I make it perfectly or not, or nothing's really perfect. Right. So just sometimes you go into the zone and then you click, but at the same time, even when you feel very confident, it's important to have that humility to understand that you're vulnerable, especially when you start getting a little bit carried away if you get overconfident. So that's the pitfall.
Yeah.
Arrogance is no good.
Arrogance is no good. What do you recommend for avid enthusiasts that want to improve, want to?
Yeah. Well, one of the ways that I teach is that instead of thinking so much about where the object ball is going, of course you want to play position, that's common, but look at it from a different perspective, and always play just position first and foremost, because the calculation and, you know, whatever the situation is, once you've made up your mind that the shot is there, if it's like you made the right assessment about the shot, that it's physically possible in the, you know, the realm of your either experience or your imagination. So once you make that clear to yourself, you position the cue ball in your mind, and the cue ball position between that desired action that you put on a cue ball, the position itself carries the accuracy of the object ball. So I think people focus too much on the object ball instead of just like playing the energy of the cue ball, and that carries in itself the accuracy. So that's the way I play.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe something different.
How big of a difference do you think the equipment makes in the game?
Well, in our game we have so many different brands of tables that, you know, maybe some conditions haven't been standardized enough. So it makes it interesting because you have to deal with different cuts of pocket, different bounce on the rail, different cloth. Then there's humidity and, you know, the atmosphere, whatever it is. So you have to. It's part of the same communication that you have to go through with yourself when you're expecting a certain bounce of the table, and then it's not that. If it's is it the adjustment in the spin or the speed, or did you just miscalculate the speed of the rail or the cloth? Mm-hmm. So there's like several factors that go into it, but I think that's part of the fascination too. It's always a little bit chaotic until you hit the zone.
So how often do you change the equipment that you use? Your cue, what you carry around, what?
Yeah, I don't really change it much, except like, for example, today I was struggling with this different cue ball that we played today, the triangle, and versus last week I was playing with a measle cue ball, right? Centennial balls. So this cue ball was much lighter. So if I put spin, if I put like so-called outside English on the ball, I would overspin it. So I had to put a little bit more weight in the butt of the cue just to equalize the deflection, so I don't have to like aim differently. I can just aim what I'm comfortable with. So it's just important to pay attention to the conditions, and sometimes I might have like two different shafts that have it. One tip could be softer than the other. So if I go on new equipment, I'm better off shooting with a softer tip because it absorbs some of the impact and so stays in a straighter line. And also, usually on new cloth you don't need so much power. So it's one of these things that you have to figure out and dare to make the adjustment instead of like trying to figure out new aim.
Yeah.
That's more hard.
So for folks that don't know, what are you using right now in terms of equipment? Cue, brake cue, what?
Yeah, I've been using Mez cues already for 13 years, and I'm waiting for my new model, MI4. Hello, Mr. Kazunori. I think I'm gonna get it by the end of the year, so I'm waiting for the next model of the Mika Immonen series. And but the next model will have the wavy joint, which is Mez's own technology. It's kind of a radial type joint, but it has a kind of an extra thread within the thread, so it's like a double threaded cool little thing that they have, and it feels like really like one piece of wood when you put the cue together. So I really enjoy the hit that it makes, and so I'm playing with temporary cue. It's part of the Mez series called Axie, the Axie line, so it's just plain Jane, but like I said, it's temporary and until I get my new model later this year. So I'm putting pressure on my sponsor to deliver that new cue. So
we're putting the heat on now.
They want me to play with something special. But in any case, I mean, just that being said, you know, I'm playing with the cue that's off the rack, and it plays the same way I wanted my, you know, near future cue play like. So the only difference is that I'm playing with a new shaft called the X Pro, and it's a 30-inch X Pro instead of the standard 29-inch.
Yeah.
So this adds just a touch deflection, but which I prefer anyway, because it gives a little bit more power, and you can like really, you know, it's pretty strong on long shots. And as long as you make the adjustment on like your short game, it's just it's so powerful, the cue itself. So the Mez with the X Pro 30-inch shaft that's the thing right now.
So why do you think there is such a difference between a 29-inch standard shaft and the 30-inch shaft?
Well, the 29-inch is going to have less deflection if it's a somewhat similar taper. I think the longer taper adds a little bit more power, a little bit more meat to the shot. And from my experience, the X Pro 29-inch was like 0 deflection, and then the 30-inch just gave it a little bit more. But
touch and feel.
Yeah, a little bit more power, essentially, because if you have like very little deflection, it's gonna eat some of your energy off, because it's the tip stays longer on the cue ball, so obviously the energy is not the same by the time it hits the ball. You know, it absorbs some of the hit, some of the power. So that's what you get with low deflection cues. And if you play with very low deflection cues on a like old cloth or used cloth, it just tends to overspin. So you have to take this into, you know, your calculation. And then in that case, you either have to change your shaft or change your weight of the cue or change your aim. Something has to change because the condition has changed.
Right. And brake cue?
The brake cue, I'm playing with the Kai brake cue. This is the power brake, the latest series that has this like really cool grip, kind of like a tennis grip. And I think the shaft, if I'm not mistaken, it's in the R series of the deep impact Mez brake shaft.
And then, so one of the folks back in Portland asked, it was David Olson, wanted to know what you were thinking when you were down 5-zip to Oscar in the pac-west Invitational and came back to win that. What goes through your mind?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I don't know. Actually, earlier that day I was watching some link on YouTube or Facebook, and then there was a guy who was talking about his son who wanted to play this game, some kind of game that they played against each other, and it's like you have to, you know, cross and circle, like you have to beat the guy, outsmart him, and the son kept losing, and then, but he refused to go to sleep before he had won. Like he was persistent, you know, he wasn't gonna just give up. So then the dad was impressed that, you know, eventually the son got him for the game, and then he was thinking also, like, you know, his son gave him a good example of like, it's not about the, you know, if you're having a bad day or not, you're having a character building day. So it's like, my mantra is like, when things go bad, it's like, I'm not having a bad day, I'm having a character building day. So I try to think that way. It doesn't always work, but it's a pretty positive frame of mind.
Yeah. Do you like the format where it's a winner break type of situation, or does it ebb and flow too much for you? Or
I'm used to the winner break format from since I was younger. You know, we played that format a lot, so I don't mind it. But you know, if the tournament is alternate break, you just have to deal with it, and a lot of the tournaments these days are. So if you're not comfortable with it, it's actually a weakness. So I can't. I have to like both formats, even though probably for my, you know, high gear and tempo, the winner break is better.
Yeah. It appears that you tend to play a little bit faster. Do you consider your pace of play faster than other people? You know.
Yeah. Once I see the layout and I feel comfortable, and I don't need to take much time. It's pretty natural. I'm a natural player, and I just like to go with the flow.
Stephen Fair asked how you keep the passion alive for playing. Do you have additional goals that you want to achieve, or how do you keep that going?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I have specific tournament goals. Of course, I would like to win the World Championship this year again, or several, before I'm done. And I think you just have to stay hungry and accept that I'm still learning things, and I would really like to make one more big splash in pool, make a hit a streak where I'm like to be number one.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite game?
I like rotation games, but also I like straight pool a lot. So just even 8-ball, when it's on a big table and tight pockets, there's a lot of strategy involved, and the Chinese 8-ball has been making a little bit of a headway recently in the professional circuit. So I'm willing to try it, but I know that I have still a lot to learn about the safety play, because that table is just so tight that you can't go for crazy shots. It becomes more strategy game than break and run out.
Right. Do they have those events continuously over there, once a quarter or once a year? How do you?
Well, seems like there's a couple of different organizations that are running the events, and one is Star, and then one is Joy Billiards. So I think they're competing against each other, and they're trying to recruit players from here and this and that. But it's just tough to see it go really far unless they want to have an international event, maybe in America or overseas. Just if you want to build your game, just maybe not only inside out, but make the international scene a little bit more attractive, and then make it a global game instead of just Chinese 8-ball. So
do you think
maybe it should be called something else, not Chinese 8-ball. I don't know. Just 8-ball on a 9-foot snooker table. I don't know.
Do you think that the sport as a whole would do better if the different promoters work together from the different countries, or what do you think would make pool better for professional players?
Yeah, it would be nice to have a really good organization that looks out for both interests, and a few people that would have a common voice. The interaction between the so-called industry leaders and players has not been very fruitful as of late, and I think even the decline here in the United States, I think some more pool rooms are going out of business rather than starting. So I think it's kind of alarming. I think we have to pay attention to educating people. Just keep educating people about the game, and just keep teaching maybe more junior programs, and just have to tell people to get off their phones and get off their video games, and then keep this beautiful game alive that requires hand-eye coordination and physical ability.
Right. Sarah Nealon from Portland had asked if you have an opinion about Fargo.
I'm not super familiar with the rating and how they. I don't know how they overall can monitor everybody's Fargo rating and make it something consistent, because they're not always around to monitor it. So it's where do you see a Fargo rating that reflects to maybe a couple of tournaments, it's one thing, or if it's a current understanding of how that person is ranked according to his ability. But it's I saw a Fargo list, and it seems like reasonably accurate according to how well those players have performed lately. So I have to make myself more familiar before I can give you like
Definite.
a good answer on that.
Justin Beavis here is asking if you can give advice on the best way to focus.
Well, one of the things is definitely have adequate sleep, because it doesn't matter how well you are playing or how well you think you're playing, and actually even thinking that you're playing well is kind of dangerous, because I think you're only as good as your next shot, not your last shot, but the next shot. Right. So just like I just love people who think they're like, I'm playing so great, and then next thing you know they'll lose a match, because you can't like put that last shot into your next shot. You just have to approach every shot in the same like humble manner, and just with the proper focus, proper pre-shot routine, and if it's a tough shot or not, I mean, treat them kind of equally, and it's a frame of mind. If I have a very tough shot, I actually try to like cheat myself into thinking that this is my favorite shot. Mm-hmm. Like, this is my absolute favorite shot, and then you just like kind of trick your subconscious mind into thinking that, yeah, of course it is. Let's do it.
So do you get any clutter going on in your brain at times, and how do you diffuse that? Mm-hmm. Or change it? Or
usually after you become more experienced, there are instinctive things that you see right away, and you should really, normally I go with my gut feeling, because I trust the solutions that come first in mind. There's a reason for that, but you have to be able to look for maybe even a second opinion, or sometimes something that you studied from other players, that something unexpected, that they had a solution, and just have to keep that on the back burner. It's just I wish I had all the answers. I would probably be on winning all the tournaments, but I love the game, and I just keep curious.
Yeah. Gentleman named Rich from Washington had asked if you have an aiming technique for jumping. When you go to jump balls, how do you stay straight in line? Yeah. Do you have a technique?
Well, I tend to aim like almost like a normal aim. Like I just go down the barrel of the shaft, and I just, once you have the line ready, you just have to like elevate your backhand and your body in that same line. And you can take a reference point, like if you're jumping over a ball, if part of that ball is in that direct line that you see as a reference point, then you can actually just use that as your reference when you're like jacked up, because now you're not looking at the object ball anymore.
Right.
Obviously, you're just trying to jump over the hurdle, and then maybe there's a little point in that hurdle that you see that you can use as an aiming. But part of the jump is also like kind of try to imagine the amount of energy that it takes to jump over the ball. So you might have to do a little practice swing just beside the cue ball, just to confirm that this is the right angle and this is the right power. So kind of like take a couple of practice strokes, and then move onto the cue ball and the target.
I know Michael Jensen from Portland had asked about kind of personal, any spiritual or religious background. Do you have a...
Yeah, I'm not highly religious. I mean, I was born Christian, but I'm more of a spiritual person, and I believe in my work ethic, and I believe in that when you play with integrity, good things are going to come to you, and when you strive for like big things. It's gonna, you have to go beyond, instead of like wanting to be in the finals, maybe you just want to win the finals and win the next round of the next event, the first round of the next event.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking that you're in the finals, this is like the semifinals, and the first round of the next event is the final. So like you have to like reach beyond, and like instead of like knocking on the door and hey, this is the final, you kick the door in. Say, what's up?
Yeah. When you were on the Moscone team,
I'm sorry, but I'm just going to touch that last topic a little bit more, because
yeah.
the reason why I like to think that rather than thinking I'm in the finals, because some people they're too happy to be even in the finals.
Sure.
And it's almost like playing, you play position on the 9, and now because you're on the 9, you all of a sudden stop playing position.
Yeah.
So instead of that, just look further, and that this is just a semifinal. This is just part of the path of destruction.
Like any other thing.
Yeah. Don't think of that situation any different than the round before that, or don't think about if you're playing 9 ball, the 8 ball, you're playing position to the 9. But part of the shot is the position. So why would you not play position when you're shooting the 9? Now the mind gets confused. If you're not playing position all of a sudden, why does this ball have to be treated any different than all the other balls? So because a part of my aim is the position, you just play position, and that becomes the aim.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Easy enough, right?
Yeah.
Sort of, kind of. So I was going to ask about training in a team situation like the Moscone team. Is the training regimen different or specific?
Well, it is. You have your team, and you want to create like an ambience of like camaraderie and like team building, and so maybe it might not be even so much like playing the game itself, but like just trying to like really get along with each other, and then trying to think of everybody as your brothers. Like the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So I think the Europeans have figured out that